Dustin Baker, VikesNow, the Sunday edition, and we're covering the draft stuff. It's going to be hot and heavy on that topic until April 28th, because that is when the event transpires, at least the first round of it. Today we're going to talk about how the Vikings can end up with a pretty tremendous draft pick at number 12, and it's really, really cool because it involves simple process of elimination, a test-taking skill that you probably learned in high school or college or any place, really. I want to go through. So the Vikings are going to pick at number 12, and this little chat is going to operate under the pretense they don't trade out of that. Now, it's probably a toss-up whether they do. Probably depends on how the board falls on that Thursday evening. But we're going to operate on the pretense that they stay for this little exercise. So I want you to do this too. When you're done watching this, I want you to go look at some mock drafts. Go look at big boards from Todd McShay or Kuiper or Jordan Reed or those dudes, or any place really. And I want you to determine the best players in the draft, probably the top 10. And by my accounts, I'm going to read these dudes off. Remember, I'm not cool. I don't have graphics yet. Haven't explored how to do that. So ordinarily, right over here, I'd list off, type it up or have some producer do it for me. Again, not cool. To tell you the 10 consensus best players in the draft. So verbally, I'm going to mention those right now to illustrate where I'm going to get. And these are in no particular order because you guessed it, I'm not that cool to know who the draft order is going to be on that fateful Thursday night. So here's what I got right now for if the draft goes according to draft forecasts, like these smart pundits, these are the men that go in the top 10. Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Ahmad Garner, 3. Number 4, Derek Stingley. Number 5, Kyle Hamilton. Number 6, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, the name butcherer here, Akim Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross. That's 10. So Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Garner, Stingley, Hamilton, Wilson, London, Ekwonu, Neal, Cross. That's 10 men right there. And if the draft doesn't get funky, then you're at the pick number 11. And that, theoretically, would leave Trayvon Walker or Jameis Williams. One of those gents will be picked at pick number 11 by Washington. And that leaves the Vikings with a choice to, by sheer spoils of the event, falling into their lap, Trayvon Walker or Jameis Williams, who's supposed to be crazy fast, faster than you, faster than me. And boom, you've got a player that is exciting, is somewhat consensus best player available at 12. And that's through just going through a predictable sequence of events from draft pundits. The 10 dudes that I named off plus 1 leaves the Vikings in tremendous shape for their prospect at 12, assuming they draft for best player available. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah seems like the type of dude that isn't going to try any bullshit and just draft for roster need. That's something you do back in the 90s and stuff like that, I believe. I think he'll get the best and the brightest because he is the best and the brightest, in my opinion. So I could stop the show right here and say, there you go. Trayvon Walker, Jameis Williams, have a good weekend. But you know that I like to get more in-depth than that. Here's what you need to, beyond the shadow of a doubt, root for in the picks that Thursday night leading up to the Vikings. You notice, in my 10, then 11, the default pick of Walker or Jameis Williams, you'll notice I didn't name any quarterbacks because you have to surmise that it would be a reach for any of those teams to draft a quarterback based on how all of these draft brains ranked them. But because the NFL in a media-driven world, as the media guy talks right now, is so quarterback heavy, and those teams in the top 11, a lot of them don't have good quarterbacks, they're probably going to take a swing at Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral, or you choose the flavor of the week at quarterback. Every time that happens on draft night, when you've got on your purple hoodie, the chances of the Vikings landing a top-tier prospect go to the moon. So, boom, if it's Lions, number 2, it won't be the Jags. If it's Lions, they're taking Malik Willis, or they're shocking the world and getting Kenny Pickett. Then just through process of elimination, the Kayvon Thibodeaux, the Derek Stingleys, they get pushed. They pushed all the way down to your purple team. And that is just going to be exponential as more prospects who weren't in the list I mentioned are chosen. And it's quarterbacks is going to be the culprit here. Or in theory, it could be more wide receivers. So maybe Jameis doesn't go to 11 or 12 to the Commanders or the Vikings. Maybe he's plucked number 7. Well, that means somebody's getting pushed out of the way. Is that Thibodeaux? Is that Drake London? Then that person, because he was pushed down, is going to be there for the Vikings. So again, this process of elimination, that more dudes who weren't in the 10 that I mentioned, they're going to get shoved down to the bottom of the pack if we consider 12 the bottom for these purple and yellow purposes. The other thing to consider is that the way that I rattled off those 10 names to get all the way to number 11, that's operating under the idea that the draft goes exactly as planned per forecasters' estimation. And I know the Raiders aren't picking because they assuredly would monkey with things and do something weird. And then everything's off to the races. But that makes the chances of the Vikings getting a top 5, top 8 prospect at 12 a lot better, because if you go into this event thinking, all right, well, I already know who the 10 guys who are going off the board to begin with, you're going to be wrong, because that's just how sports work. That's how the draft works. There's going to be some team, like let's face it, these teams are at the top of the draft order for a reason. They make shitty decisions. So they're going to do something weird. Now, it might not be silly for Malik Willis to get drafted by the Panthers. That might be the most brilliant move the Panthers have ever made. But it's per what we read with draft boards across the board, he probably shouldn't go that high. But some teams probably going to stretch for Pickett, Willis, you name it. There's going to be something weird. So the theory that I've had for the first 6 minutes of the show was that I know what's going to happen in the draft. You know what's going to happen in the draft. And it's going to go down the line. All the usual suspects are going to be taken. But that ain't going to happen. And that increases the Vikings' chances of being the victors, the spoil gatherers of other teams' poor decisions, assuming the Vikings don't go back to their weird draft tendencies of 15 years ago. And then, if all of this is moot, if the draft goes exactly as planned, and the Vikings don't like Trayvon Walker, or they say that we don't need a wide receiver, Jameis Williams, then they can trade back. They have that in their back pocket for a value-based general manager to get richer with multiple dudes rather than taking a crack or a swing at number 12. When I posted the video about the Chiefs, like how it would be a smart idea for the Vikings to get in bed with the Chiefs on draft night and steal their 29th and 30th pick, I got some blowback that said we don't want shitty lower round picks. We want a home run guy at 12, and that's fair. That made me reevaluate. I get where you're coming from. And yeah, the history of the 12th pick, overall pick, was Warren Sapp, Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of good players that come with that spot. So I get it. The reason I was so fascinated with getting the Chiefs picks is because you get 2 guys on 5-year deals, which are coveted because you get 1 more year to figure out if they're any good. And the Vikings say that's actually pretty useful, from Bridgewater to Garrett Bradbury, and the verdict's still out. But in theory, on the whole, the Vikings could still trade back. If Dustin's theory, no good, it goes straight to hell. He was wrong. He didn't know what he's talking about, which would mean the Vikings don't like Trayvon Walker or Jameis Williams. But I'll wrap this up with a couple points. The big one is reiterating. If you want one of these monsters of rock candidates, one of these titans of industry dudes like Thibodeaux, there is a very reasonable, if you go play around with PFF's mock draft tool or Draft Network's mock simulator, you don't have to do anything too weird to get him to fall to the Vikings. It's simple, for the most part, of sending Malik Willis to the Panthers, and then maybe 1 extra wide receiver goes off the board. Because we know pretty much these tackles, Ikwonu, messing up his name, Evan Neal, and Charles Cross are probably safe, sturdy picks in the top 10 because these are the guys that protect quarterbacks. But the quarterbacks are the ones that can upset everything, and it would be beneficial to the Vikings. The more quarterbacks that are chosen before the Vikings pick at number 12, you should stand up at the bar, on your couch, Yes, on your couch, and applaud, because that means that these top tier prospects are going to be available in an unsung way for Kevin O'Connell's 2022 Vikings. And my parting note here is I've talked about Malik Willis a couple times, and Rick Spielman even said to Albert Breer of SI.com this week that dude's pretty good. And that's the other consolation prize contingency plan, is at number 12. If everything does go according to plan, all of these down the line, the top prospects are chosen by these other teams within, bad teams from last year start making right decisions finally in the spring of 2022. That would mean Malik Willis, in theory, would be there at 12. And his scintillating prospect, Vikings could just take him. And then we can marry both worlds, both sides of the Kirk Cousins debate, that you've got a contingency plan. This was the plan all along. You give O'Connell a shot to be productive in his first year. We know Cousins can at least get to 8-9, 9-8 by himself. And if O'Connell cannot tap that into more grandiose proficiency, and then we're sitting here a year from now and the team's mediocre, then you've got Malik Willis ready to play for you 4 years more on a rookie deal while you trade Cousins to a place where he chooses because he has a no-trade clause. So I know there's a lot of you that watch this show and then the Vikings community in general that don't care for Cousins. And I get it. Not an elite dude. He's just pretty darn consistent. And I think if you can follow the Rams blueprint, then perhaps he can take the team all the way to February football. But that's my take. If you don't believe that, then what the hell? Just draft Malik Willis at 12, and you'll have the almighty bet hedge, and you'll get your nimble, mobile quarterback, the young guy, to build around the young general manager and the young head coach, and bada bing, it's all set. Reminder, so you guys don't forget, tomorrow I have Ben Lieber on the show. I'm going to ask him about the Our Freaking Dog meeting that Cousins held. I'm going to ask him about this mystery with Anthony Barr. It's crazy, crazy quiet free agency for that man. And I'll get his draft predictions, kind of the same questions I asked Wes Johnson and Sean Borman, because I think they're all pretty applicable this time of year. And then Wednesday is Lindsey Young, who writes for the Vikings, and Nick Young. Finally, he and I are going to connect on Friday. All I got for Sunday, go do your mock drafts and see what I'm talking about with this marvelous player thing, and Skol, baby.